You're watching another Nerd Stalker interview. All
Oh,
right, we're live here. Yeah, we are live. Okay, welcome to another Nerd Stalker interview. This is Greg Viloria, aka Social Greg, on Twitter for the Nerd Stalker Media Network. Today we'll be continuing our monthly segment called Startup Blog Insights with Examiner writer and entrepreneur Taffy Williams, who's the co-founder and CEO of Colonial TDC, which offers a professional team of scientific and business experts to build and grow medical and technology companies. Taffy also writes for the small business section of Examiner.com. With his own personal advice based on his own personal insights, and that's what we're kind of trying to do here every month is get a little bit more in-depth sights to all his articles. So good morning, Taffy, from North Carolina, and welcome to the Startup Blog Insights for November.
hi, how are you doing?
Good. So how's things in North Carolina there?
They're doing pretty good. It's a little bit cloudy and cold today, but we've had some really cold weather lately, but so far it's not too bad.
Oh, well, that's great. I think.
You missed the autumn out there. We get it here. We had all the trees changing colors and stuff, so that's been
Oh
pretty good.
man, yeah, I know. Like I said last time, Taffy takes a lot of great pictures, and I think he has some fall pictures that I've seen up there with the changing trees around this area. So check that one out as well. So anyway, this week we're celebrating Global Entrepreneurship Week, if you didn't know. And this month we're focusing on an article that was released on November 13th by Taffy on the Examiner.com called Four Ways to Enhance Idea Generation and Selection Critical to Business. So really it is how to pull out down to your hundreds of ideas to make to pick the greatest ones. So let's get started, Taffy. The first one's called just idea generation. That makes sense to me.
Yeah, one of the things that the article talked about was at a commemoration or something in honor of Linus Pauling. Linus Pauling had won 2 Nobel Prizes, and Dr. Crick had stated, in order to be able to come up with a lot of stuff and be able to win Nobel Prizes, you need to come up with a lot of ideas. Then you got to figure out a way to throw most of them out. So the goal is to end up with a lot of ideas. Now, one of the things that is particularly important in coming up with ideas is in keep them focused. Is trying to identify an actual problem to solve. Something you want to solve, something you want to learn, something that's important, and then try to understand as much as you can about that particular space. And in trying to come up with a solution to a problem, now you generate ideas. And you can generate lots of ideas. They don't have to be one or two. Some of them may be better, some of them may be worse, but you need to generate a lot of them. And sometimes the ideas may not solve that problem. They may solve a different problem. And if you can find a way to sort and organize these, that would be great. But generate a lot of ideas first.
Wow, wow. And basically, the more ideas you generate, the better, and you could actually sort them out into even better ideas or even combine some, right?
Absolutely. I mean, sometimes you'll take them and they morph and take two of them together and it turns out to be better than the original ones. And you can make adjustments. You could be, and as you're thinking about this stuff and you're learning as much as you can about how to solve a problem and you're coming up with the ideas, you'll be fairly surprised. Sometimes when you're doing something like running, or drinking, or
Yeah,
or some other event where you're not
yeah,
actually focused on it, your creative part of your mind will begin to take and adjust those and give you new ideas or ways to solve problems, from the things you're starting to look at and think about. So you'll begin sorting them, you'll begin filtering them. This all begins, to be a process, and as you become more experienced in doing it, it becomes a little bit easier. It never becomes super easy, but it becomes a little bit easier and you become more used to doing it.
Now, you suggest there's a ranking process. Now, that's just a mental ranking process, but I know I've been in the companies where we sat down and damn ranked the thing with like 10 million criteria and everything like that. I mean, what do you suggest in this area to do?
I kind of rank them in my own mind for the most part. I'll sit down and try to look at, well, which ones are the most likely. I try to think through, if I did this one, what are the problems that might take place? Because there's always the unintended consequences of trying to take a new path. You think you've got a great idea, and then all of a sudden you find out something else happens, you know, and so you got to deal with it. So being able to rank them, determine which ones are the best, figuring out, then you'll finally settle on one that you think is a little bit better.
Well, that's the elimination part, right? I found that's the most difficult, isn't it?
It is. I mean, you know, some of them are easy to eliminate. Okay, you know, some of them are real easy to eliminate. Okay, that's really stupid. I'm not doing that again. And some of them are not.
Okay. Okay.
So you know, so you end up finding them. Then you get down to those handful that, well, this could work, or that could work, or that could work. Sometimes you just have to pick one. And if you've got like 5 and you can't really distinguish between them and any one of them might work, you may have to pick one but leave the others available to be able to follow those. Or maybe you'll take 2 and try and go after solving the problem, you know, that way.
I see. I see. Now you talked about ranking them again, but that, you know I go in circles all the time if I have like 10 ideas in my head. I mean, is there anything that you do that's a little bit different when you do the ranking in your own head, or is it just comes? Or
for me, it gets closer to where I can pick out the top 3, 4, or 5.
Wow.
And then I start thinking about you know, like which one or ones might be the best to work. And I think, well, if I did this, it's like playing chess. You ever play chess?
Oh yeah. Oh
yeah.
Yeah. I suck at it.
Right, so you play 3. You have to think 3 or 4 moves ahead. I used to be very good at it. I'm not so great anymore because I don't. But it takes practice. And when you're playing that game, if you do it a lot, you have and you practice, you actually are able to be able to do better at predicting further moves out. Well, this is part of the process. Here is that you're looking at, well, what happens if I do this and this and this, and you try to play out the schemes in your head, and you think, and then at some point, for me, all of a sudden, it's like, well, I've thought about 3, 4, or 5 of them, and I says, you know, if I did this, I think I solve more problems, and I'll try that one first. Now, one of the things you got to do is keep an open mind. You know, you start down a path, and you think you're going to get to grandma's house, but then the bridge is out. And
wow.
you got different path. And so you're able to make adjustments, but at least you know where you're trying to get to. You have a path laid out, and you try to pick the top 3 or 4 options, and you try to put those together to get there.
No, I see. And then once you select them, I mean, you have to develop them a little bit further, right? You mentioned in the article, right?
Right. So I was talking to a company this week, so you know, and as an example, and I said, you know, I said, here's a drug that we've got, and it's going to do A, B, C, D, and E, and I said, great. What's the actual indication for the drug? And they said, well, we're going to treat this disease. I says, no, that's a disease. I asked you what the indication was. What are you going to write on the bottle? What I mean by that is that, you know, you can say I'm going to treat acne, right? Okay, but it may be that you're going to treat acne that's resistant to some antibiotic, and it's going to be able to have it clear up within 2 weeks. Or it may be that if you're going to treat cancer patients, you know, cancer patients come in, they've never been treated before. You're going to treat the first-timers. Well, if you're going to treat first-timers, how are you going to get the physician to use your drug as opposed to what standard of care is? If you're going to treat the guys that are at the very end of the scheme, the ones that have failed all of the therapies, well, what is the likelihood your drug is going to work there? And then what's the size of the market that you're going to go into? Just about every idea you have requires a little bit of thought and development in order to implement it in such a way that it accomplishes what you want to do. And so it's taking and thinking through that idea, figuring out how to develop it, how to make it accomplish the end goals, is part of where you actually take it, what I call bench to bedside or lab to you know, consumer. And it's really that development activity, and as you begin thinking backwards, when I like to think backwards and say, here's the end product, the consumer's going to buy this, what's the step before that? What's the step before that? And as you begin laying that out, it becomes a little bit more obvious to you, you know, that something, that you see a plan emerge about how to do what you want to do.
I see. So you know, I notice with a lot of entrepreneurs, and I see that in you and I talk a lot, they definitely have a lot of ideas percolating in their head, and even though they're working on one of the ideas and it's starting to come to fruition, they have another vision of another one that they're trying to put into a pipeline, which is really kind of cool. I don't have that, but I notice that the good entrepreneurs constantly have a pipeline of ideas. But can you share about a story about idea generation all through this whole process of calling it and then selecting the
Sure. I worked in a laboratory for, doing basic research for close to half my life, and in doing that, I have patents, I've got publications, and one of the first lessons that I learned very early on was that I was given a task of solving a particular problem. And the problem was how to create this molecule that we were going to use to study. And it was a biological molecule that required having biological materials to help convert it to something else. And so the guy that I was working with my degree walked into his office after 6 months and said, "This thing didn't work. Now give me something new to do." He looked at me and he said, "You didn't do it right. Go back and figure out how to make it work." All of a sudden now you got to go back and generate ideas to solve a problem because you're stuck. It's like writing a song, right? If you're going to write a song, and some of the greatest songwriters, you can read stories about them, have gone off, and all of a sudden the idea popped into their head for the song and the lyrics and everything else. As you're thinking and trying to solve a problem, you develop ideas, and those ideas can be adjusted, and eventually I worked the problem out. So from there on, anytime we got involved with trying to do research where we're going to go in a new direction, it could be research for a product, it could be research within a company to solve a problem that we've got, the first step is to learn as much as you can. So once you start understanding the area and then you have a real problem, now you can begin thinking about how to solve the problem. So it's a solution to a problem that generates the ideas for me in the greatest amount. And so it stems from a laboratory. So same thing happened the other day. I was talking to a group about a particular therapeutic, and I asked them, it says, "Okay, what are you going to treat with it?" Well, they gave me the name of the disease. They didn't tell me, how they were going to actually make this work. So I said, "Okay, let's back up. How are we going to treat the patient?" So they said, "We're going to do such and such." I said, "So you're going to tell me that the doctors are not going to treat the patients the way they normally would, which apparently works, and they're going to use your stuff instead, hoping it's going to work?" And they just looked at me. That's not going to work. You have to develop something else so you can demonstrate to people that your idea is worth pursuing, and that they will drop what they're doing and move to use your product. So when you're generating, products, it really is important to understand how your end-up consumers are going to use it, and be able to make sure that you try to match what the product is going to be relative to the intended use and everything else. And again, that helps generate ideas, and it helps you to figure it out. But you do it by solving problems. What's the problem? What's the problem, and how do I solve the problem?
I see. So basically,
remember our discussion last time about how do you end up getting a grant?
That's right.
What did I tell you? And so we thought about what the problem was, and then we talked about how to address the problem.
No, and that was very helpful because you got me thinking a little bit differently. I was trying to actually focus more on what do I want to do, not what the other guy wants me to do for them.
That's right. You got it.
And actually that was such a big, Taffy helped me with this problem I was going through, and I was writing a grant proposal, and he asked me a very critical question, and I said, I was thinking totally different, and I think with ideas it's the same way. You got to think a little bit different. There's something you want to do, but does the group that you want to sell this to want to have what you want to do?
That's right. So what's your problem? Think about the problem. Think about how to solve the problem. That starts to generate the ideas. Think about as many different ways to solve the problem as you can, and then sort through them and try and figure out which ones you think you can implement.
Well, it's interesting. I worked in a company that was very, I would say, operational. It's like Intel. Intel is very operational, and they made us, when we were actually having problems with a product, we'd have to go through a fishbone diagram. and, and what you're describing here is just a natural fishbone diagram. You know, you don't call it a fishbone diagram, but that's what they made us do because I think a lot of us don't think that way, quite frankly.
Well,
you know, we can't. Yeah, go ahead.
I came from working in the laboratory and doing research a good portion of my life, and even with all the things we do, still requires having to do research-like things. And after a while, you begin to develop ideas and paths.
So it becomes natural after a while if you could actually develop this process.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Wow. Well, anyway, thank you for the November Startup Blog Insights. This is always kind of fun. You have a lot of great stories, and we get to share a lot of stuff. And
I mean, you know, between the Startup Blog and the Examiner, I've written over 300 articles.
Wow.
And there's been over 300,000 reads of those articles.
Hey, so next month, why don't we close off with maybe the top of the year for you? Maybe we could do that one.
Every year I put out the top 10.
Yeah, let's do that.
10. And actually, one of them that's kind of fun, and you should read it, is Write 3 Letters.
Ah, okay.
It's an old one that I wrote that all of a sudden started to catch on. I don't know what happened. It just started to catch on, and it's actually showing up right now in the top 10. And I wrote it a couple of years ago, and and part of it stemmed from a joke.
Wow. Okay. we'll have to catch up on some of those. I think our December show will end your year, so we should probably pick out some of the best things out of startup blogs for 2013 then. Yeah. So okay, great. Well, anyway, Taffy, thanks again. I appreciate your time and always love talking to you. So we'll close off the interview. So how can listeners get a hold of you and
I think on the bottom of the screen, at least I hope it says this time colonialtdc.com. Again, this is ideas. We tried to figure out how to put it on there because last time we couldn't.
Yeah, exactly.
And in the upper right-hand corner of the top, the drop-down menus have links to Startup Blog, the Examiner articles, the photography, and so they're all available through the drop-down menus on the top of the Colonial website. So that's a good way to find it. And then each one of the articles that I put out gives you an email address.
Yeah. You make it very easy.
Yeah.
And you can catch Taffy on Twitter, and that's how I met him originally on Twilly, TWILLI 2861, and he's always active on there, very active. So.
Yeah, I've been accused of that.
Anyway, I think that's why you have a lot of followers. Anyway, that was Taffy Williams of Colonial TDC. You can catch him in the small business section of Examiner.com, as well as his blog called Startup Blog Insights. So thanks for joining us, everyone. This is Greg Viloria, aka Social Greg for Twitter, on the Nerd Soccer Media Network, where we believe in tech, startups, design, and you. Thanks for joining us, everyone, and be careful out there.
All right, bye-bye.